We have some new faces with us this morning. Good morning, good morning. Come on over. Starting with second-year resident Dr. Melissa King, fresh from the VA.
Everyone calls me Mel. I'm so happy to be here.
Trinity Santos, intern.
Victoria Giavatti, MS3.
Dennis Whitaker, MS4.
Welcome to the Pitt.
We got two traumas from the T, 5 minutes out.
Okay, copy that. Actually, this is the most important person that you're going to meet today. This is Dana. She's our charge nurse. She is the ringleader of our circus. Do what she says when she says it. As you can see, our house is always packed, and our department is mostly clogged up with boarders. Those are admitted patients waiting for a room upstairs, sometimes for days. Beds are a very precious commodity around here, so please be quick and efficient with your workups. What else? We treat the sicker patients back here, but please keep your eye on that waiting room. Make sure nobody's gonna die out there. Your senior residents are Dr. Collins and Dr. Langdon. You report to them, and they report to me. Okay? Great. Senior residents, you got your sign-outs?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Let's do this.
Hello, all. Welcome back to What's On Tonight, a podcast with elaborate, quirky, and unpredictable conversations about TV, movies, and more. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
Tonight, we are covering The Pitt, Season 1, Episode 1, titled 7 a.m. Please note, this is a spoiler-filled podcast, so if you haven't watched the episode yet and don't want to be spoiled, come back and check us out after you finish watching. So before we dive into the meat of the episode, I thought it might be fun to take a look at some information about the show, and I will credit Wikipedia for all of this information. Mandy, you want to start us off?
I will, but I would prefer that you not use the term meat when you're talking about the show ever again, considering what I had to watch.
Oh, well, now I'm going to use it a lot. Yeah, there was some good stuff there.
The Pitt is an American medical drama television series created by R. Scott Gemmell. Each episode of the season will cover 1 hour of a single 15-hour emergency room shift at the fictional Pittsburgh Trauma Medical Hospital.
The star of the show, Noah Wiley, the main reason I wanted to cover this, he was also a star of the best medical drama in TV history called ER. You may have heard of it. He plays Dr. Michael Robbie Rabinovich. Noah played my biggest crush, TV crush ever, John Carter, on the 90s TV medical drama ER. And I think he was an excellent pick to play this.
I definitely think he's gotten a lot hotter over the years. Back in the day, I would have said I didn't see what you were talking about because he looked too baby-faced, but he looks real good. In this show, he looks real good.
Sexy.
That's probably my favorite part of the show. There's a bit of controversy surrounding the show. On August 27th, 2024, it was reported that Michael Crichton's widow, Sherry Crichton, sued Warner Brothers Television. Wells, also a part of the ER production club, Wiley, Gemmell, over a breach of contract of the ER sequel, which got turned into The Pitt. And Crichton was the creator of ER, is not credited as a creator. On November 4th, 2024, Warner Brothers Television's lawyers responded to the lawsuit by filing for a motion to dismiss and claim that it is a completely different show. So did it start out being?
Well, the way I understood it is that there was a plan in 2020. There were talks to do an ER reboot, which would follow John Carter, Noah Wiley's character, today. But due to some kind of issue with Michael Crichton's estate, they never could get it off the ground. So Wells, Gemmell, and Wiley is heavy into the production of this, decided to take the premise and turn it into something completely different. And I was worried that this was going to be an ER reboot. But after watching it, I feel like this is a very different show than ER.
Yeah, I couldn't remember when Michael Crichton died. So while you were just talking, I was Googling it. And he died in 2008. I mean, there have been like 40 different TV dramas, medical dramas since then. Really, the only thing these two had in common is that they both starred Noah Wiley.
Yeah.
It's not normally my bag. I only watched the first season of ER, but as far as I can remember, and you would know better than I would, this character doesn't really seem to have a lot in common with John Carter.
He's not at all anything like John Carter, which I'm very glad they did not do a...
Like, he doesn't even strike me as like an older version of John Carter.
We'll get more into that when we get into the episode, but that's one of my favorite things.
Well, that is a reach. That was a reach on Sherry Crichton's part, I think, to try to claim that this was some kind of a ripoff because, I mean, it's been 20 years.
Well, yeah, and so many, I think just because so many former ER producers and directors are involved, she might have felt like they were just leaving him
I
out.
guess.
So I don't know all the facts, so I'm not going to judge her for making that choice. But having seen the show, I don't think it's the same.
Yeah, it seemed different to me. At any rate, as for its early reception, a lot of other people must have liked something because the Rotten Tomatoes reported an 83% approval rating with an average rating of 7.7 out of 10, which is really good for Rotten Tomatoes.
I make it a point not to read reviews until after we've done our notes and covered our podcast because I don't want to be influenced by other people's opinions. But I did look just for the first episode, the Rotten Tomatoes score was like over 90%. So that's cool. All right, well, let's get into the episode. Episode 1 was written by R. Scott Gimel and directed by John Wells. Mandy, please tell us the synopsis of this episode.
While Dr. Robbie attempts to distract himself from the anniversary of his mentor's death, Dr. Collins tries to push through her shift with morning sickness. After fainting at the site of a brutal injury, Victoria Javadi fights to prove herself in the pit.
So my first impression, I think it was a good pilot episode. It was a bit confusing at times and felt a little all over the place, but I think that was the point. Dropping us in the middle of a busy ER, showing us firsthand what it looks like for patients, the doctors and the nurses. You know, they don't know what they're walking into on a shift. And I think it worked very well, even though it took a minute to catch up. I think that might have a good feeling of what it's like to work in a busy ER trauma center. And I do want to say ahead of time, I'm going to reference my parents a lot in my notes because my father was a physician. He's retired now. He's a gastroenterologist. My mom was an RN who worked most of her career at VA hospital. I'm going to reference them quite a bit throughout this show.
I'm excited about that.
There's a lot of characters in this show, and I think it's going to take us some time to get to know them. But some of them I liked instantly, others I'm not sure of. I thought it was a very interesting first hour, and I'm very excited to see how the rest plays out. I give it 4 inhaled teeth lost in a bar fight out of 5.
That's a good one.
What did you think? No.
I'm trying to think of a way to say this that's not going to make you immediately start freaking out that I'm going to hate this. I don't hate it. I will say I would not be watching this show if it weren't for you, but you know that. It's just not, first of all, I don't watch a lot of television, period. I don't have a lot of attention span left. Speaking of the way the pandemic has affected us all, like between working from home and us being trapped in the house for 2 years, I'm pretty much, and I read a lot. So I can't even finish this sentence without getting sidetracked. Watching an entire hour of a very sometimes confusing and chaotic medical drama, it's going to be a challenge for me, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. I should probably start working on building my attention span back up and not being like reading and playing a game and all of that at the same time, which is normally how I watch TV now. I will say it is neither so far as great as I had hoped for me or as bad as I had feared. It reminded me a lot of House, which I loved, which is actually the last medical drama that I watched. One of the things that I really did like about this, well, we'll get into it, is there are so many neurodivergent people that are in science fields, and I've never been diagnosed as neurodivergent, but I can be not everybody's cup of tea sometimes. And it just made me laugh. So many people in this show that come across as assholes, but that's just how their brain works. And watching them all interact together, that was one of my favorite parts of the show. There was a lot of exposition in this show, which of course it would have to be in the first episode because they're trying to like let you know about the characters. But I felt like it got a little soapy at times. I was kind of hoping that it would be a little bit less network TV style drama and more about an accurate representation of a modern shift in an emergency room.
I think you got that though.
I think we're just not going to agree probably on the soapiness of, I do feel like there was a lot of the chaos and the different types of emergencies that might show up. And of course, it's a TV show. So it's not really going to be interesting if you don't have some of the character studies and all that stuff. So, I mean, I could change. And maybe it was just like I said, because it's the first episode and they have to give a lot of exposition and give you a lot of background on these characters and who they are and whatnot. But it just, to me, felt a little clunky at times when they were giving the setup of who everybody is. It felt very much like we were in a TV show, not necessarily in an ER at certain times.
That's fair.
So I enjoyed it. I'm hoping that it gets a little bit less Grey's Anatomy and maybe a little bit more like the first 48 or something like that.
So we open up on beautiful shots of Pittsburgh, and we end up walking to the hospital with the still handsome Noah Wiley, who, as I said earlier, plays Dr. Michael Rabinovich, also known as Robbie. I really liked the opening music.
I did too. I tried to find who it was. I couldn't find it.
I have captions on when I watch shows that we're podcasting for so I can better get some quotes. And it said it, but I didn't go back and look, but I will check. I thought it was cool that they made the switch from everyone hearing the music to just him.
Yeah.
When he walks into the ER. I like the way hour one appears on the screen. I thought it was a cool touch.
Yeah.
I loved the way they showed from his eyes, you know, the way he was taking in a too crowded ER waiting room. And it just made me think of how realistic that is with today's current hospital situations. That, you know, I think it said later that people wait 8 to 12 hours to be seen for what they're considering an emergency. And I think that's sad.
Especially once he starts getting into why that often is the nursing shortage.
Yeah. So he then looks at a photo of a doctor frame and hung on the wall. I made a note of this because it seemed important. I feel like there's nothing they show us that's not going to mean something later on, and it turns out that this does. Two very funny nurses. There's Princess, played by Kristen Villanueva, and Perla, played by Emilian Abarella. And they're all freaked out that it seems like the hospital is going to be sold. I love how cool and nonchalant Noah Wiley was, or I need to call him his character name, Robbie, was about this. Like he's heard this 100,000 times before and doesn't seem very concerned about it. I did some Googling on hospital acquisitions and mergers, and there is a lot of mixed feelings on how people feel about hospitals being bought out by private, you know, like the HCAs.
Mm-hmm.
Actually had a conversation with my mom yesterday. She had to go to the ER. She's fine, thank goodness. But our small town hospital is about to be bought out, possibly by a private healthcare system, and they're considering shutting it down.
Mm.
And that is the only hospital in our hometown. So it would be a 30+ minute drive for anyone in that town that had an emergency. So it just made me think about that, but how the people buying are like, well, we will improve care and wait times and all of this stuff. But then a lot of people who have been affected by those mergers and acquisitions feel like they're getting less care. Very
uneven.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know a great deal about it, but I do know that particularly in the field of OBGYN, there are a lot of people that are shuttering their doors because of insurances and because insurance issues and liability issues, but also because these major corporations are buying up so many of them, and then they're running them, as we see, and that's a major theme in the whole episode, as just for profit. It's strictly and primarily for profit, and just if the profit is not there or if the margins aren't reached, just like in a lot of other issues with the American healthcare system, then those places are shuttered.
Yeah. We then move on to meet my favorite character of the show, Dana. She is the charge nurse, played by Catherine Lanasa.
I did like her.
My mom was a charge nurse. And when you watch Dana, hearing my mom tell stories of her dealings with people over the years, I feel like Dana is a taller, white version of my short brown mother.
Everybody's taller.
Yeah, that's true. Everybody's taller than my mom.
That 4-year-old in this episode was taller than Doris.
My mom is very short, y'all. It is obvious that she's the one who runs the place and keeps everything going. Like I said, I like to imagine that my mom was a lot like Dana when she was at work. Any thoughts on her?
On Dana?
Yeah.
No, I liked her. Again, this is the part I don't want you to get defensive about it.
Oh, I'm not.
I just feel like there were a lot of stereotypes of characters that I've seen in a lot of other medical dramas in here. I loved all of the performers. I like all of the actors. I'm really thinking that I need to just give it a few episodes to warm up, and that it just maybe in my head, this first episode suffered a bit from too much exposition, trying to set things up maybe too quickly in my mind. So I did think that she was a lot like a lot of other competent, sassy charge nurse characters that I've seen in other dramas, but I like the actress a lot. I think she gives that character a lot of depth. I did enjoy her being kind of a center of calm throughout all the chaos.
Yeah. She brought some good comedic breaks too to some of the very heavy points in the episodes. I was curious why everyone kept asking Dr. Robbie if he was okay working today. Obviously, there's some kind of baggage she's carrying around. Unfortunately, at the end of the episode, we get more of that backstory via flashbacks. This part wanted really badly, once we realized what it was, to roll my eyes. But after rewatching it the second time, I like that they went there because, again, spoiler, it's COVID. That day in the thick of early COVID, and he lost who I'm assuming is his mentor. I think it is so important that we don't forget COVID happened, and we also don't forget the toll that took on frontline workers, because it's not something we talk about anymore. So at first I was like, oh, great, we're going to use this story. But I like the way that they're doing it. And I'm glad that they chose to do it, because it really adds, I think, some realistic levity, if that makes sense, if I'm using that correctly, to what these guys are going through in a post-COVID medical world.
Yeah, we had very similar reactions to that. Initially, I wanted to kind of roll my eyes as well, which is, again, part of why I'm trying to slow roll my whole feeling and expectation about this, because my initial instinct was to be like, oh, of course it's COVID. And then I thought, just like you did, man, if you're going to talk about important things that are affecting the healthcare community, not just from a standpoint of the healthcare workers in this country and really worldwide when you're talking about that issue, but also, as we then come to see later in this episode, the effect that it has on the patients often that they're dealing with. Because once we start, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but when we start talking about that mom that comes in with her teenage son, how COVID has affected the mental health and the physical reality. He lost his dad to COVID. It was such a massive thing that happened. And I think in a large part, it has a large part to do with how this recent election went in our country. I think it has to do with a lot of the frustration and anxiety and tension that we have in our world right now. We want to just turn the page and act like it didn't happen because we're also ready to move on. But that's just not the reality. It's like any other trauma. It was a massive trauma that happened to all of us, and particularly to those in the healthcare industry. So I think, like you felt like, after I watched it again, I was like, no, that's, of course, they need to talk about COVID.
Right.
So
I like the setup of the ER. I had to shake my head a lot of times to shake out looking at this as ER, but the going from a medical show I loved in the 90s to now. And again, I don't watch any current medical dramas. I did watch Grey's Anatomy early on, but I stopped watching when Izzy was having sex with the dead guy.
Same.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure a lot of the high tech stuff is out there now, but I liked the crisp, clean look of the ER. I liked that the charge nurse, the boards, everything was in that central location. And then no matter how they swung the camera around, you saw patients' rooms. I think it did well to make some great shots and flow as they went through seeing the patients in the episode.
Yeah.
I don't know how you felt about it. I told Mandy when we talked yesterday about something else that I tried not to watch this through her eyes, because she has very different feelings, as you've heard, about dramas like this. But I wanted to be annoyed about Dr. Abbott, the guy that we find on the roof. But once they started their conversation, I really got into this part of the story, and I'm sad that he's only credited for this episode because I loved the chemistry between him and Dr. Robbie.
Wasn't he still there in the second episode? Because that's one of my notes. Why is this
he's
guy
only
still
in
here?
the first episode.
Okay, I have a bit of face blindness, but I swear there was another gray-haired white doctor dude that just popped in and out when they were having various medical emergencies. And every time I saw him, and I thought even through the second episode, I kept thinking, wasn't that guy supposed to be going home?
Yeah, no, he's only in the first.
Okay, well, I need to go back and pay attention to that again. I did find that scene a little silly. I mean, because your boy's about to jump off and you don't call anybody or tell anyone, or
I don't necessarily think that that's that was his intention, that was what he was going to do.
Oh no, Dr. Robbie definitely thought it was at least more than half of a possibility that old boy was about to take a header off the roof.
Well, I think it was just to show us the
emotional toll.
The emotional toll that
I agree.
being a doctor or a medical care professional can, especially in the emergency room, because he talks about the conversation. First, the guy was played by Sean Haddisy. Mark pointed that out to me, that he played Stan in the movie The Faculty, and he looks completely different. When they got up there, I was like, oh, okay, here we go. But then when they had their conversation, I took it less as this guy needs to be talked off a ledge, but more so this guy had a crap day. He spent all this, was 2 or 3 hours coding a 39-year-old vet who survived 3 tours in Iraq without a scratch, and he couldn't save him. And then the comment where he says, I must have had a reason at one time to keep coming back, but I can't think of one right now. And then Robbie says, it's the job that keeps on giving. Ulcers, suicidal tendencies. Besides, if you jump on my shift, that's just rude, man. And the guy just took a deep breath, which, as a exercise breather person, I don't think he was going to jump. And I think that there is the chemistry between him and Dr. Robbie and the conversation that they had. I don't know. It's like when he took that deep breath, he summoned the courage to go back and face what he just needed a minute to walk away from, if that makes any sense.
It does. And I think that is a summary of what happened, but I feel like there was absolutely supposed to be the ambiguity there that Dr. Robbie thought that there was a very real possibility that this was going to be the day that that guy jumped. And I think it was deliberately left a bit ambiguous because at the end he didn't do it. But I think it was very much supposed to be a dramatic moment that highlighted that this is the emotional toll. The reality is that, I think we talked about this recently, that doctors and dentists, for some strange reason, and veterinarians have very, very high suicide rates. So I think that was absolutely supposed to be a moment where you as the viewer and Dr. Robbie as well were supposed to think there is a possibility that this guy's about to eat it. I wish that they could have made that a bit more subtle. I just think that it would have been a better conversation I think I could understand more that his friend wasn't immediately like, hey, we need to get you in some kind of crisis, something. Because I can tell you that in the real world, if that were me and you, once I got you off the roof, you definitely weren't going to be leaving without me getting you talking to someone about the fact that you were inches away from the edge of a cliff.
I think had they done it with him on the roof, not on the ledge, it would have, I don't know. I liked the scene. I liked it all.
I liked the scene too. I just personally would have preferred that it been a little more subtle, that you could have initially thought he's just up there to talk to his friend because he knows that he's had a shit shift. And then maybe his friend is eyeing the edge a little bit too much. And then Noah Wiley is getting a little bit, or Robbie is getting a little bit like, hey man, is he staring at the edge of that a little bit too much? And then you're left with the ambiguity of, I hope my friend's going to be fine, to me, to have that thought that he wasn't more than halfway leaning towards it, you would have had him not actively standing on the ledge.
Right. Like I said, if he had just been sitting on a chair on the roof.
Right.
And then he come out and had that conversation. I do completely agree with you that it would have made the scene a lot better.
I'm hoping that these little super dramatic moments are going to calm down over the next few episodes as we get more aware of who these characters are as people. But I definitely think there's a lot of growth opportunity, and I like the writing enough that I think that some of that might level off.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to lose super dramatic moments, but I think the way they use those super dramatic moments, like we will talk about when we discuss the next episode,
right,
are much better.
More around the medical drama and not so much about,
Yes.
But anyway.
Okay. I cannot wait to meet the Kraken. He is brought up multiple times in this episode.
I have that in my note that I'm so excited to meet the Kraken.
I don't know who he is, but I can't wait. But oh my God, the guy's been waiting a week for a bed on the psych ward.
Yeah.
And we wonder why we have so many people with mental health issues out there doing bad things.
Hey, you know what, though? I will tell you what, I don't know a great deal about the medical system in the UK, but as bad as that sounds, I have a friend that lives on Orkney, you know, the island that the Bro family, my family was originally from in Scotland. She has been waiting 6 months just to talk to a psychiatrist.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and she has suicidal ideation. Yeah. So, I mean,
that makes me sad.
It's horrible.
It's not just America.
No, I don't think it is. And I think a lot of it can be traced back to COVID. People quarantine. I frankly think we should have all done a better job of quarantining by and large, but it definitely took a psychological toll on this world.
Oh, yeah. I look at myself. You know, I used to love to go out, not necessarily like clubbing or anything. I'm old, but I used to love to go hang out with friends and go have lunches and go to her house and hang out. And I loved it. Used to love to just get out, go places and do things. And COVID, and it wasn't even really the fear of going out. It's just that I work from home. And now after having done that for so long, it's like my brain is reconditioned. I cannot stand, I'm not a shut-in by all means, people. That's not what I'm saying. But I don't like to leave the house if I don't have to.
No, I think most people understand what we're talking about, Becky, because I think it's an epidemic, really. I think that especially with the older generation, you know, Ava's my daughter. She's 21, and her friend group, they really still enjoy getting out, going and hanging out, being social, all of that. But I feel like anybody over the age of 25, when COVID started, we're all suffering, or most of us are suffering from that same thing. We just got so, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just you got used to it, or if it's
comfortable.
I've never really been a people person, so I don't know if it's that it's just like, let me know that I'm more of an asshole, and this has always been my nature, but I never got to enjoy not being around people that much, because I still, like, I like to go, and I've always been somebody that would go do things by myself. I'll go eat by myself. I'll go to the movies by myself. I still love doing that. In the past, I would do those things alone. Now it's almost like I prefer to do them alone.
Yeah. I don't even like that. I mean, no, I don't like being around people like I used to. But my biggest thing is I just don't want to leave.
Yeah.
I don't want to go anywhere. And, you know, I'll be the first one to be like, yes. Oh, Mandy, you want to come over for lunch next weekend? And I'm like, I am in. I am there.
And then the day before, you're just like,
the day before, Mandy calls and she's like, yeah, something came up. And outwardly, I'm like, oh, inwardly, I am putting on my pajama pants back on, taking off my bra and crawling back in bed to watch TV.
The way that I am is I want to get out about once a day, but I want it very much under my terms. I don't really want to plan anything. Anytime I have to plan something, even like you were talking about, if it's something that I really think that I would enjoy, just the stress of having something to quote unquote winky fingers, call back to what we do in the shows.
Yes.
Just having that on my agenda gives me anxiety. Like having anything planned gives me anxiety that's outside of my normal, you know, routine of what I have to do. And COVID, I believe that is partly a result of COVID. I joke about my attention span, but it's not really a joke. I have very little attention span anymore for anything that's not something that is super duper interesting to me.
Took its toll, and I think it changed all of us in one way or the other. So we get back to the show. Dana walks in on senior resident Dr. Gloria Collins, played by the absolutely beautiful. This woman is stunning. I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce her last name right, and I'm sorry if I do it incorrectly. Tracy Ifechor, Ifeachor, and she's tossing her cookies. It's made clear she's pregnant, but she's not ready to tell anyone based on how a past pregnancy ended up. I really love Dana's comment when she says she's not ready, and Dana's like, nothing but good vibes, but not in a patronizing or condescending or don't think negative, think positive.
Just let her know she was thinking about her. Yeah, that she was wishing her nothing but good vibes.
Thought that was cool, and I like the way that I think Dana's the one who says something about it, morning sickness being a blessing, which I've never been pregnant. You have, and I remember your morning sickness.
Yeah, it sucked.
That it's a kind of a gift or a blessing. And then she just smiled at the end. Gloria, Dr. Collins, or I think her name is Heather Collins, not Gloria. She smiled on her way.
Dr. Collins' first name was Heather? How did I miss that?
I think it's Heather.
I'm glad you're keeping up with this because I could not catch everybody's names. I was calling them stuff like pasty white girl, snarky white girl.
I'm okay with that. Okay, I'll figure that out later because when I Google it, it's trying to tell me doctor's name Collins in Pittsburgh.
Well, I love that character. I didn't catch that they said that morning sickness was a blessing.
I may have made that up in my head, but I feel like that's something that she said.
But it could be because I've always heard, and there is some truth to this, that a lot of doctors tell you that having a higher incidence of morning sickness means that there is more, and it's progesterone. It means that you have a higher level of that in your system. So a lot of times people who have had pregnancy loss in the past do look at it as a positive thing because that means that they're more likely having a healthy pregnancy.
Oh, good.
Or that may just be some shit they tell us to make you not want to take a header off the top of the roof when you've been feeling like you got to puke for the last 8 weeks.
I almost forgot the patient streaking through the halls.
That was funny.
My mom tells me those things do in fact happen. One thing that guy said that I think was a callback to ER, my favorite episode of ER is real quick where Noah Wiley and his med student Lucy get stabbed by a schizophrenic, and the guy is running away saying, "You're gonna hurt me, no more needles." That is the word for word what the psych patient said to Lucy and John in that episode.
By the way, that was the last episode of ER I watched when Lucy's laying there dying.
He hits the floor and he looks and there's nothing he can do.
Yeah, that was it for me. I was like, I'm out. No, Moss, I can't handle this anymore. Life Goes On. RIP Life Goes On. She was the chick from Life Goes On. Remember that?
She was. And there's I don't want to go into it right now because we're going to run long on this episode anyway. But there's a very interesting story about her and Noah Wiley, their real life situation working together. You should read it. I was mad at him for a minute, but he made it right.
I've heard that he was challenging to work with.
He admits it. Of course, anything he's ever put out there, I watch it. But he admitted that he was very hard on newcomers because they had worked so hard to create this iconic show.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a dick, and he owns that. They have since mended fences, which I'm really glad, because she was a great character. So it's made clear during the conversation with Dr. Collins and Dana that Dr. Adamson, the Dr. Robbie was looking at on the photo wall, died 4 years ago, and Dr. Robbie doesn't usually work on this day. I'm guessing he doesn't work this day because he blames himself for Dr. Adamson's death, which...
I think they say that at some point.
Based on, towards the end of the episode, we get a lot more info on that. So back at Grand Central Station, which is what I'm choosing to call the main desk area where everyone does their work, we meet senior resident Dr. Frank Langdon. I immediately looked at this guy and was like, okay, here's the trope, cocky, douchey doctor.
I thought he was gay.
Did you really?
Yeah, I thought he was gay until the second episode.
Oh, I did not see that at all. I thought he was going to be the guy who was just there.
I know what you mean. Like the mix. No, what was Alex's name from the intern from Grey's Anatomy?
Alex.
You thought he was like Alex.
Yes, but they surprised me with him throughout the episode.
Yeah, I don't have a real good read on him, except not the greatest at really picking up on emotional cues or thinking through the emotional ramifications of his actions. He seems much more comfortable in crisis situations and thinking from a purely medical standpoint.
Right. He's a critical thinker, not an emotional.
Right. Before we move past the guy streaking, though, I have to tell you what I thought about when I saw that was when Ava was probably 2. No, sorry. Jackson was born when she was almost, so she was a little older than 4 because Jackson was still a baby. I had to take her for her boosters before, I think it was before kindergarten. And she had on one of those little gowns with nothing else on. And she had decided that she was not going to get shots that day. And I had Jackson. So she started running down the hallway at the pediatrician with her little butt flapping in the breeze there. And I had the baby. I was like, hey, dog, I got this infant. You're going to have, then the nurse was so like, really? You're not going to tackle that? Fine. And so I made them go do it. They had to go chase her down, bring her down like a charging rhino.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty funny.
She's going to love that you told this story.
She is, especially the part about her little tiny booty.
Her little booty. So now we meet our first newbie, second-year resident, Dr. Melissa King, played by Taylor Dearden, and I love her. I love her from the second.
Is she the redhead?
She's the glasses. She's the one who went out in the parking lot.
Was singing Meg the Stallion.
Yes. Savage. She is quirky.
I like her.
She's smart and she's eager, but she's not in your face.
No, she's not. She looks like Amy Adams. I thought I have a note here.
She looks a lot like Amy Adams.
Yeah, I have a note that she looks like Amy Adams from Talladega Nights.
Yes. We're about to make animal noises. Look away. God, I love that movie.
Yeah, I liked her too. I like her character a lot. She is very much another stereotype of, the wide-eyed newbie. I have in here, of course, this was the day the residents were coming in, because that just makes sense. It's like a trope that you've always got the newbies that are being shown around the hospital, and it gave them the excuse for the nurse or the doctor and give the tour and explain everything to everybody. But out of that group, she was my favorite.
Definitely. I thought it was cute. Her, like you said, her wide-eyed stare and her talking about how excited she is to be here. And Dr. Abbott gives her a look and is like, talk to me at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And then this made me think of you. Dr. Robbie says to her, Dr. Abbott's going through an existential crisis. And Abbott says, don't worry, you'll get there soon enough. And ever since we recorded the finale of What We Do in the Shadows, I am hearing the word existential a lot, and all I could think of you and how many times you said existential in our recording of the finale. So thank you for that chuckle during that moment.
That's funny. But you know what? That finale had never mind. I'm not going to get into the existentialness of it all.
Guillermo's by the way, I've been rewatching, and God, that show is so good. So we meet next Dr. Samir Mohan, played by Supriya Ganesh, who...
I like her.
If I were a doctor, that's who I would be. She takes a long time to get patients' history. And I thought it was very sweet. There were some good jokes that Dr. Robbie threw at her when he was like, she's like, I was getting a thorough background. He's like, but you weren't even into this century yet.
Right.
But I like her, and we'll learn more about her later in this episode, in the next episode, because you can tell she is the one with empathy.
Yeah.
She will be the champion for the patient. We'll learn more about that later, but I like where they're taking her character so far.
Yeah. I would be Dr. Yolanda.
Which one's that?
She's the Hispanic one that when the lady is screaming because she's been pushed onto the rails, says, let me know when she stops screaming.
I hate her.
I loved her.
And she is my least favorite person. No, She is not my least favorite. We'll get to my least favorite here in just
Cream
a few
cheese
minutes.
Boy. Cream cheese boy, which is what I'm calling the doctor I thought was gay. He's my least favorite.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's a toss up between him and snarky, pasty white girl.
Let's get there. We're almost there. I thought it was interesting the tracking the residents' patients per hour. I could see why they do that to keep things moving, but I also feel like that could end up causing problems with patient care, which is another reason why I appreciate these people for doing what they do, because I don't think I could do it.
Yeah, that's kind of the tension throughout the whole episode is Noah Wiley or Dr. Robbie trying to walk this line between getting a hire, which I thought was hilarious when the mean old administrator lady comes in. I think that was Gloria. And she's talking about I think it was, what was it? The petty gain score or something. I thought she said Chris Gaines score at first. Yeah, so I'm like, what is Garth Brooks' alter ego from the 90s have to do with?
Well, she is a friend in low places. She was
a skank. I didn't like her.
And she is one of the reasons why I think our healthcare system is failing.
Yeah, she definitely was the heavy in this episode, because I agree that is the biggest problem, is that we've got bean counters making critical decisions about our healthcare in this country.
So then we meet my second favorite character, Dr. Cassie McKay, played by Fiona Dora. She's a second-year resident who we later learn is a single mom in her 40s. We see her talking to the one that if I worked with her, I would punch her in the face. Intern Trinity Santos, who I wrote in my notes, I hate her. And then fourth-year meds.
Why do you get to go around giving people nicknames? You've been here 2 hours.
Yeah, and you're an intern. Everybody. All of these people are that you're talking crap to and making fun of are actually above you. Yeah. So sit down. Yeah. But again, we have to have a trope. Yeah. We have to have that guy, and she's doing the actress who I was so mad I didn't even write the poor woman's name down. So kudos to you, lady. And then we also meet fourth-year med student Dennis Whitaker, who I think is absolutely adorable. Yeah. And Victor Giavotti, a third-year med student who seems to feel the need to explain her age and how she deserves to be there, which I was annoyed with at first, but we later find out why, because it turns out her mom is a top surgeon in the hospital, and I completely
and her dad's an endocrinologist.
I had a whole new view.
Yeah, I don't think she likes being a doctor. I feel like
no, I don't think she wants to do this. That's what she feels like she has to.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of this 15-hour shift, one of the journeys that's going to happen is either she's going to find her calling or completely understand that this is not her calling and leave.
And make her parents mad, but do the right thing. I expect there to be they really are, you could see the way they're starting to pair some of this team up. And I like that they paired her with Dr. McKay, the older lady.
Yeah, I did too.
I think that's two complete opposites. We have a young woman who doesn't know what she wants. You have I hate to say 42 is older, but an older woman who finally, after a long time, found her place. I think those two are going to learn a lot from each other.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was really smart writing. I like that.
I think they did a phenomenal job with diversity. There's so many different walks of life, ethnicities, but it doesn't seem like they did it on purpose. To me, it felt natural. It didn't feel like what we do in the shadows with covering homosexuality, but it's not.
It's just part of someone's life. It's not a quote unquote Winky Fingers very special episode, right?
Yeah, I really
I wondered what you thought about that, because I had a thought at first, like, well, this is kind of funny that this is such a that like they're really going out of their way to quote unquote do diversity. But then I immediately rethought that, and I thought, no, this is a hospital in Pittsburgh. I imagine that this is probably very close to I don't think that they went crazy with trying to make sure that sometimes when you're watching some shows, like you were talking about with What We Do in the Shadows, and what they did so great is that they did diversity right. They had a gay character, but being gay was not the center of his identity, just like it is not necessarily the center of anyone that I know in real life who is gay's identity, other than just that's who they are. It was just a facet of his character. And I think that they did a good job here with everybody from every walk of life, that, you could tell that it wasn't just the same cast. I bet if you go back and you look at, say, the cast of House or the original cast of ER, you would have 40 white faces and then like 2 brown people
That's how it
scattered in there.
was.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not America. That's
No.
not accurate. But the overcorrection to that sometimes has been some shows in the last 5, 10, 15 years are trying to do better to course correct. They feel like they're checking off a box. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh, they have to have a lesbian character, or, oh, they have to have a Muslim character, but they can't both be a lesbian and you know what I mean? Like, it feels like they're checking off boxes. This did not feel like that.
No, it didn't. It felt very natural.
Yeah, this felt like the world. It reminded me, I remember having this conversation a few years ago with some people online in a mom's group I was in about the lack of Black people in higher education or in skilled places. I pointed out at that time, I mean, they were not wrong. There are still places that it is very, very difficult. I'm not telling you anything you don't know to get ahead if you are not a straight white male, but at the time, I remember pointing out my dentist was Black, my psychiatrist was Black, my endodontist was Black. Like, all of my major healthcare providers were actually Black, and most of them were women. So I think that's just a reflection of the world today. I thought they did a great job with that.
Yeah, I agree. So we've met most of our main characters. So now let's dive into some of the patients. I don't think each patient that we see is going to be a major plot point, but I do think there are some that will stand out throughout this entire 15-hour shift. So I tried to pay attention to everyone, but I'm not going to go into to every single person's story. But my favorite thing about when they started their rounds, Cassie, Dr. McKay, she's got such phenomenal bedside manner with patients, and she is obviously so good at her job and really knows how to work with the residents to bring out something, or at least teach them something, not only about what they're doing, but about themselves. I love her character.
She's a great teacher. I noticed that too. They did that character really well. And I'd love, as it turns out, we find that she's probably, like, initially, this character could be very stereotypical of, resident with a heart of gold, but you come to find out later on that she's probably been through some stuff.
She's
like,
done
she's not always been this lady. Her knowledge has come after
later, like us.
Right,
like
exactly.
I didn't find myself till my late 30s.
No, I think that's pretty, common of anybody that has genuine wisdom as they get older, is that they learn from their mistakes. The people that are still stupid at 50 and 60 are the ones that choose not to learn from. We all make mistakes.
So I'm interested, but we'll talk more about that later, but I am interested about.
Yeah, I like her character.
So we start doing all the rounds. I love how Dr. Robbie just seems like a cool guy and who's just very good at what he does. I absolutely adore how he respects his nurses, but he doesn't just do it. He says it. He tells all of these people.
He backs it up.
Yes, because I have heard countless stories from my mom, who I think regrets not having gone all the way to be a doctor. She would have been a phenomenal doctor, but she was an amazing nurse. She's too retired. But there are a lot of times of how belittling doctors can be to nurses and how they rely on them so much, but they treat them like crap and don't give them the credit that they're due. So it was refreshing to see this very obviously mature, well-known doctor to give these guys the respect, but also to tell his underlings, they're the reason why we're here. They're the reasons why everything runs smoothly. Do what they say and treat them with respect. I loved all of that.
The one that the first case that they've got the guy that may or may not, we still don't know, have been a good Samaritan trying to save the woman that looked like she had been pushed onto
Sam Wallace.
Yeah, that looked like she'd been pushed onto the tracks. I want to say that I love the term degloved.
Isn't that cool? I almost went with 4 degloved ankles out of 5, but that's the reaction I was trying to avoid. So
I find it so repulsing. I find it so repulsive, but also I just love that phrase. I've always liked that phrase. So while I would never be able to do that in real life, I was glad that they brought a degloving into the episode, which, for those who don't know, is where literally your skin is peeled off of your leg.
Not just, all of your skin. Like, all you see is tendons and muscles and...
I think it's the fact that something in my brain is both attracted and repulsed by the fact that it happens so often that they have a term for it. Like, it's a very common thing that happens, especially in certain professions. That kind of injury, a degloving, happens a lot. You were talking about your mom and dad. I don't know if I've ever, I feel like I have told you that Bonnie and Ricky owned an ambulance service. My aunt and uncle that raised me, they owned an ambulance service when I was growing up that they ran it out of our home. And some of their patients were people that they would have to carry a lot. And one of the ones I've always remembered stories about was somebody who was a psychiatric patient that they would have to take to the hospital fairly often. And they would take and erase the skin on their own arm, like use a eraser or other thing, and then just literally pull things out of their arm.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
So that was your horror movie moment of the week.
But that's what I was thinking of when we were dealing with the degloving.
That's nice. Still surprise me sometimes after all these years. I thought it was wild that they were talking about having to put patients in the hall, which we will later find out has a very unfortunate thing for one of the patients. I loved watching the rounds and getting to know the patients. That is what it's like. I, back in high school, thought I was going to become a nurse like my mom. And so I went through the certified nursing assistant course through my health occupations class in high school. And thanks to my parents being in the medical profession, we did get to go do a lot of experiences. I saw a C-section, I saw a birth, both of which made me probably why I don't have kids today.
I've had 2 C-sections and I didn't watch either one of them.
It's a trip. I mean, they just, no, I'm not going to get into that. We've had enough grossness for the day, but it's wild. It's a trip.
Yeah, that's why I didn't watch.
I'll be happy to tell you what happened to you.
No, ma'am.
While
I saw it on TLC, the birth story, before I ever got pregnant. It was like, as a matter of fact, like when they were with Ava, when they did the incision and the doctor was like, Eric was way up there because we'd already talked about it. And it was kind of like, my whole thought with that is, you know, whether I'd had it, because we didn't know I was going to have a C-section, but either way, he was not looking. We talked about, you know, my thought was, it's like, you might love going to China on vacation. You enjoy everything about China. China is your favorite place. But if you're there during a monsoon and everything gets destroyed, you're probably not going to want to go back to China again. So we had already decided Eric wasn't looking.
That's the right thing to do. I never understood. I don't have kids, but Darren and I did discuss, should I ever get pregnant, that he was going to stay up here. That you don't need to know. I've seen it and you don't need to see.
Yeah. You don't need to see that. When
nobody needs to see that. I'm sad the doctors even need to see that.
Exactly. When they cut me open, the doctor was like, Dad, do you want to come down here? And Eric and I both at the same time went, no, thank you.
It was a very impressive thing to see what I saw. And then here's a baby. And then they hand off the baby and they put you back together. And anyway. So we talked about Sam Wallace, who was injured trying to save the woman who we are led to believe was pushed onto the tracks as a hate crime. I like the visuals of the tools and procedures that we got to see. It was very current century. It was gross, but it was neat to see what tools are available for hospitals that can afford it. It was really neat to see some of that stuff.
Yeah, they brought that lady in that was having the chest compressions with the
machine.
I know. I was like, why didn't we invent that 20 years ago?
Seriously. That was one of my, what I'm calling chart notes.
Ooh, that's good.
Girl, this is so much fun for me. So the woman he saved, you talked about, has that gruesome ankle injury. Great special effects makeup on that one. I'm going to give little Javati a break. I would have fallen and hit the floor long before they went to put that back together.
I can't believe I watched through that. Like that, those kinds of injuries where, you know, like if you're watching football and
no, we don't. That's enough. We are
you know exactly what I'm talking about. For that alone, I could never be, because if I saw that, as much as I love you, I would take a bullet for you any day. But if I ever see that happen to you, I will run screaming with my hands up in the air.
Well, that's comforting. I'm glad to know that.
I'm being real, Becky. If it ever happens to me, you might as well just shoot me and let me go, because I can't live with the knowledge. I would not be able to look at. Nope.
Wow. All right. So, note to self: do not stick with Mandy during a zombie apocalypse.
No, do not. I will leave you.
I felt really bad for this patient. And
Me too.
I think this was a great story that they could have easily glossed over or made quick, but they stayed with it and they gave us more the view of and this is why I didn't like the surgeon who was like, come get me when she stopped screaming.
Yeah.
Surgeons are stereotyped as the cocky, arrogant, and some of them rightfully so, but I think surgeons tend believe that surgeons are more important. It's more important to them about making the cut. And I mean the literal cut and getting to do the procedure instead of actually thinking of the patient themselves. And it was very heart-wrenching for me to see from this woman's point of view, though she can't communicate with these
Yeah.
people. She can't tell them what's wrong, nor does she know what they're doing to her or what they're planning on doing to her. And I think that is very relevant in our current day because we do have a huge, very diverse melting pot. And I'm glad that we've got such a diverse group of people here.
Me too.
And some of them don't all know the language.
It leads to challenges when situations like this, though.
Yeah, so I'm glad that they made that a thing. And I love that beautiful moment when Dr. Collins helps her figure out where she's from using that phone. Well, great acting from both the patient and Dr. Collins. The visible relief on both of their faces was just...
That may have been my favorite moment in the episode. I did think they made some really good acting choices there. It was very sweet.
And it was a good thing to show. It was a good issue in healthcare to show that there is sometimes a barrier that can hinder patient care and how the doctors are able to care for them.
I think, though, I see it a little bit differently than you do. And probably the reason I said that surgeon is a lot like me is or at least that was the one I saw myself the most in this episode. I didn't think that she was being cocky or even that she is not. Book I read a while back that was about a doctor, and like it was a historical book, and it was this doctor and he had a nurse and she was very dour and her face was, she wasn't very emotional. She was very kind of came across as cold or what have you. And a character in the book said she was sweet. And the doctor was like, well, actually, no, if sweet means that she cares about blah, blah, blah. No, she's not. But she's very good at what she did. And I think that in the medical profession, you have to have both types of people and maybe even just certain situations. I think that it's a balance. And I think that like one of the things that made Noah Wiley's character really great in this show and the reason that he is the hero is that they show that he is both empathetic, but also tries to keep calm, cool, and collected, even in the midst of the most chaotic situations. And when you have a situation like that is so chaotic, you need people who are not they may not be your favorite people. They may be the ones that you would hate to have as a roommate or that you might think are a complete dick in every other situation in their life. But you need people like that in the room that are going to be like not affected by the emotional turmoil that's going on around them. Does that make sense?
I don't disagree with you, but also if I was that woman who just had all of the flesh
I'd
ripped off of my ankle, and I heard that woman say, well, call me when she's done screaming. F you, man.
Yeah, I'd be pissed.
I don't disagree with you that there needs to be not, if everyone had the same personality and same mannerisms or whatever, this world would be bad. It would not work. But I don't think you need to be an outright dick. And I think that's what she is more often than she needs to be.
Right. But I don't even think from there. And again, look, this what that reminds me of is when I was having Ava, my doctor he did my C-section, and I actually even went back to him with Jackson because he did a great job with my C-section, had the worst bedside manner of any doctor I have ever known or heard about in my life. I think he was bipolar. I mean, because doctors are human, and I genuinely think he was bipolar. When he was having a good day, he was chatty and funny and empathetic. When he was having a bad day, he was an asshole. And it turned out after I had Jackson, I found out his nurses absolutely couldn't stand him. And a lot of it having to do with his bedside manner and his arrogance and things like that. But like he was breaking my water with Ava, and I am an Oompa Loompa. There's just not a lot of room in my body for a baby because I'm so short. And so by the time she was at the 9-month point, like she was so low down that they're trying to break my water and nothing is coming out. And I have what you might call a sensitive cervix. So while they're up there shoving
Let's wrap this up.
Well, anyway. Oh, look, Miss Medical Drama. You can't handle it.
It's more so, you and I could talk about this all day, but we have like 4 listeners, and I don't want to lose them all because you're talking about things being shoved up in your cervix and
wrapping it up. That's just what it is, man. There was no water
let's
coming
save
out.
it for like 10 listeners. We'll do a whole episode on your cervix.
Getting to the point, he's up there and it hurt. It hurt really bad. And I started crying and he looked at me and said, "Does it really hurt that bad?" And when he did, the nurses that were on each side of my, holding one leg and the other holding the other, their heads both whipped around so fast you could hear it, like, to glare at him. And then one of them looked at me and she explained why there was, what was going on. And then she looked back at him and went, "It hurts. It is painful." And he immediately realized what a jackass he had been. And he apologized, said, that he didn't understand. I guess a long story short, what I'm trying to say is that did piss me off. And if I were that woman, I would have been furious if I'd understood what the nurse said. I just think, though, that in a real world situation, sometimes we need doctors like that because they are so clinical that they see things that other people don't necessarily see. Bedside manner is not their thing, but they can still be incredible at what they do.
Alrighty then. I'm going to move on to another person I hate in this episode, Trinity. There is something going on with your lover surgeon in Trinity.
You think?
Oh, I saw it in the first episode, and I really saw it in the next one that we discussed. Watch them.
Was Trinity the one that was doing the...
Yes.
I saw it too.
Something's going on.
Actually, I agree with you. I didn't realize that was Trinity. I don't know, because it all started to run together. There were so many people that I didn't realize she was the one that was doing that situation with her. But I had absolutely the same thought that, there's some kind of kissy going on with
I don't know if
characters.
they have started yet, but Surgeon Lady definitely is interested. So I'm curious to see what happens. And if she starts being nicer, I might actually write down her name instead of calling her Surgeon Lady.
I could see those two assholes really deserving each other.
Yeah. Sometimes it's not opposites attract, but anyway. Next we get Otis, the triathlete who ends up in cardiac arrest. Dr. Robbie's smart to figure out that the guy has too much potassium from all the exercising he's doing. And I wrote a note here that this is just another reason for me to stay away from exercise.
For sure. That was a real House mystery is what I wrote down, because that was very much like the kind of thing that every episode of House was centered around, was some kind of like, it should be obvious, but we can't figure out what keeps happening to this person. You would hate him, though.
Yeah, that's why I couldn't watch it. I was like, So I thought it was an interesting thing that it showed us that, obviously Dr. Robbie doesn't always follow the rules when treating his patients, but it doesn't come from an arrogant place of arrogance. It just comes from a place of, I feel like, all these years of him doing what he's doing, that he just knows sometimes following protocol isn't what's best for the patient. But I found it was interesting that Dr. Collins seemed to be very annoyed by that. So there's got to be some kind of backstory between the two of them.
They're totally doing it, and that's his baby.
I went there first, but I also thought maybe she might have been Dr. Adamson's daughter, or...
No, man. She was fucking your boy Noah Wiley through the entire episode.
I felt like he was IFing her.
He was.
I don't feel like it was reciprocated.
Oh, she totally was. For show. Go back and watch it again. There was several times that he was not paying attention, and she's just looking at him like, "That's why I love that man." That's like, oh, he gets on my nerves, but he's also so hot when he's over there being sweet and doctory.
I will say, I may have a problem with Noah Wiley's characters dating people because Tandy Newton, I think her name Tandy, she's on Westworld. She came on the show towards the latter years of ER and became his girlfriend, and she ruined everything.
She's crazy.
But I still to this day look at her and feel anger in my chest, and maybe I just refuse to accept that people might make out with Noah Wiley on TV.
You can't trust Dr. Collins with Noah's sweet, tender little feelings yet.
No, I need to know you're worthy
Well,
of
she's
my
no
boy.
Tandy Newton. Tandy's way more dramatic, and well, Dr. Collins seems like a nice, solid lady.
She does, but I'm going to need her to prove herself before she can have some of that. If she hadn't already, and if she has, she better take care of
I'm
it.
saying if Noah Wiley has knocked up my girl, then Noah Wiley's the one that needs to be proven himself.
Do you know? You remember Sparky that we used to work with?
Yes.
His wife met Noah Wiley, and there's a photo at his house, wherever he lives now, of her and Noah Wiley together. And I'm not going to lie, it made me a little mad at Sparky's wife.
Yeah, I know you, so I immediately, when you told me there was a photo of the two of them, already was wondering how you never snuck that out of their home and cut her head out and put your head on
Put mine on it. I thought about it. And dear Noah Wiley, if you ever listen to this podcast, please don't be creeped out by me. I'm a happily married woman. You may or may not be on my list.
Becky, if he made it past my cervix talks and he's
But
really
please come on our
invested in
show and talk to us about the Pitt. So yeah, I really opened that door, didn't I?
Yeah, that's what she wants to talk to you about, Noah. The pit in your pants.
Let's moving on. We're going long. I promise y'all we're going to finish this. So next we have the mom who is sick, and we later find out that she made herself sick to get her son to the hospital because she's very concerned about what she found in his notebook about a list of girls that he wanted to harm. And this is another story. I don't think it's going to end well, but I'm glad that they're doing it because this is another is prevalent the right word, issue in America now.
Resulting from COVID.
And I think it's very important that it is being talked about, but they didn't do it in a way where this is going to stretch out, I think, over the next few episodes. And I'm glad.
Same, because it needs time.
Yes.
It's not a quote unquote very special episode type of story. That would have been too cheap.
Yeah.
That's what I'm excited about this fact that it's a 15 hour, 1 hour per episode arc, is that it will allow for a lot of these stories that I think when you said earlier that you think that there's not a lot that's going on that even in the background or whatever, that's not going to come back. I'm hoping for that too. I'm enjoying that. And I think that that's going to be fun to experience exciting to experience over the next 15 episodes, is seeing how something that, if you had like an ER, it might be something they tried to wrap up in one episode, but they're going to be able to give it the time and space to tell a really good story.
To grow. Yeah. So we end the episode with Dr. Robbie having flashbacks to the early days of COVID, and we see that he does suffer from some obvious PTSD, the sweating, the ringing of the ears, the vision. I felt so bad for him.
Me too.
And that's the day we learned that at that time that his mentor was slipping away. And that's how the episode ends. So do you have any other main points? I have my chart note, just like a few. We don't have to really elaborate on them, just a few things that I didn't want to go in depth on, but I do think I wanted to make a point of.
I will just say, before we completely move past all of the different medical dramas that were going on in here, I did have a couple of notes. Number one, who looked at that woman that turned out to be from Nepal and genuinely said, maybe Pakistan? That woman looks nothing like anybody from Pakistan that is native Pakistani. So I thought that was crazy. Listening to those two interns bicker while that poor woman from Nepal was sitting there and couldn't understand a damn thing that they said to each other. That's me at the nail salon, except opposite. The poop guy that was pooping into the into the bucket.
That's one of my chart notes.
Yuck.
That was epic. And give that guy an Emmy.
Yes, that was very funny. I want to call the bitchy intern Pale and Snarky. That's her name. Why does she get to nickname everyone? Someone should slap her.
What about Parsky?
Parsky. Maybe. That might work. I don't know.
We need to abbreviate those two, but I like it.
And then I put on here, I am not digging all these shots going into people's bodies. I should mention that I could watch horror movies all day long, but watching people get actual shot is really, really tough for me. So I think you should be paying me extra for that.
Well, I'm not paying you anything, so sure, I'll give you extra.
The kid eating the gummies. I totally called that right up the front. And I think that one of the quibbles I have, two things. One of the quibbles I have with this show is that this episode, and it's pretty minor, but I hope that it gets corrected over the time. There were a lot of bitchy women in this, a lot of the characters that were deeply unpleasant, overwhelmingly, they were women. The mom that was dealing with the kid that had accidentally eaten gummies, the daughter of the guy that was coding that had a DNR, but she was...
We're not there yet.
Okay. Well, anyway, I hope that they get away from like every unpleasant character being a woman. And then the last thing I had to say is that woman whose kid, who I'm calling Columbine, being a victim of elder abuse, and they were like, she's 54. Maybe she's experiencing elder abuse. Fuck right off with that. I'll be 50 next year. Somebody tries to tell me that I'm experiencing elder abuse, we'll get a karate chop to the throat. It may be technically true, but you better not be calling me an elder anytime in the next decade.
All right. Well, mine are Robbie explaining the nursing home staff sending their patients here, and then they all come in the mornings after bed checks.
I bet that's probably true.
I believe that it is, but it made me sad.
Yeah, it is sad.
I loved that Dr. Robbie takes a moment of silence for each patient that's lost. I think that's very respectful. But Whitaker's phone going off in the middle with that funky music song was a very needed relief there.
That reminded me when Ava was being baptized, my phone started ringing and it was playing Mama's Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys.
I love it.
Yeah.
The drunk guy, there is in most hospitals. It was sad, but I loved how Dr. Robbie treated him with respect.
Yeah, me too. He treated him with dignity. I like that a lot.
Last, I love Dana and Robbie's chemistry. It's obvious they worked together for a long time and have serious respect for each other. I just love every moment that they're on screen together. So that is my chart notes. Final thoughts. I think it was a very good pilot episode. It wasn't perfect. There was a lot to follow, try to keep up with, and a lot of people to be introduced. But I do feel that this was necessary to set up what I think is going to be some very great storylines. And I'm very curious to see how the next 14 hours play out. I think the casting for the most part is great. And I love how at the end of the first episode, I'm already invested in so many of the characters. Shout out to Noah Wiley. I know I talk a lot about having a crush on him, but I generally do think he is an absolute amazing actor, and his ability to portray a wide range of not necessarily even emotions, but just he's just got such a wide range, but it's not over the top. And that to me makes Dr. Robbie seem like a real person that we could one day meet. Mm-hmm. And I can get invested in a realistic, but also very credits a lot of Noah Wiley's acting abilities.
I give him all the credit because I think that in different characters' hands, this could have been much more hammy, over the top, melodramatic, and acting choices really kept this from being a more stereotypical medical drama.
Yeah.
I agree with you 100%. I think it wasn't 100% perfect because there was a lot of exposition that had to be gotten out, a lot of explaining who everybody is and showing everything that's in the hospital and how things go. But hopefully, and that may just be because they only have 15 episodes and this is the first one, so hopefully that's going to even out some more. And I'm really excited about some of the storylines that they've got going on. I can't wait to see how they play out.
Awesome. Anything else you want to add on this episode?
Nope.
Well, we did not get any feedback, but if you would like to leave us some feedback or just say hello, please send us an email or a voice message as an attachment to what'sontonight2@gmail.com. You can visit our Facebook page where there will always be a post for the next episode. And there you can leave feedback in the comments section or send us a message through Facebook Messenger. We can be found on Instagram as well at What's On Tonight Podcast and the number 2. We would greatly appreciate it if you leave a review, comment, and or share on your podcast app listening of choice. And just a reminder that we are officially on Apple Podcasts. So we move on to the show where we have our podcast recommendations or talk about anything else that you'd like to share. Mandy, anything besides your cervix that you'd like to talk about?
No, let's let you guys know about what's really important to me in life, and that's my sensitive cervix. But I will also mention, as always, Nashville Launchpad, which is a charity that services young people who are experiencing houselessness to try to get them straight free housing in emergency situations. They also have a kind of a mentorship program where they have people that are experiencing more long term to help them get kind of an apartment type living for short periods of time to help them get stability in work and jobs. There are all kinds of ways, if you go to their website, that you can help out. If you've got time, you can volunteer, or if you've got clothing, gently used clothing that you can donate, which then helps them to supply these things to people that come in. It's just a great organization. So I really encourage everybody to go and check them out.
Yeah, I started following them on Facebook, and their posts have started. It's bringing smiles to my face seeing what they're doing and the people that actually getting to see the people that they're helping. I'm excited, and I'm very excited. I know it's going to be later on in the year, but I look forward to us getting together and cooking up some food for these guys. It all seems like a really great cause. So
yeah, I know we're running long, Becky, but I want to tell you I want to mention to anybody who might be interested in if you want to volunteer in person, there's like an hour and a half online Zoom. They have several times a week that you can do the training. It's very easy, but I want to tell you that I did it this past week. And the thing that I love, love, love about these folks the most is that, coming from a background of pretty poverty stricken childhood for quite a while. Don't get me wrong. I never experienced homelessness. My parents always worked very, very hard. We always had the basic necessities, even when it was super, super hard for them to provide them for us. We always had those things. But there were situations in my life where I was in situations with people that had more money and were donating things, or I was the recipient of charity. And sometimes those experiences were deeply humiliating because they came from a place of people feeling like they were better than you. And people who are in need often are deeply sensitive to the fact that they are perhaps being looked down upon or thought less than, and then it makes you less likely to want to reach out for help. I love that one of the main focuses of their training is that if you are going to volunteer with this organization, you are going to do this from a situation of we are a community with these guys, the people that are experiencing this homelessness. It could be you, it could be your friend. You are not going to come in to this place and expect to treat anybody as if you are better than them, or they are very much centered around being not just inclusive of LGBTQIA people, but actually affirming, not just accepting, but affirming that you do not come in and judge other people's journey or lifestyle. You let them lead the conversation. You let them lead the relationship. So I can't say enough good things about this organization.
that's cool. I can be heard on Adrenaline Cinema Podcast, Panels to Pixels Podcast, and here on What's On Tonight. As far as recommendations, Still Slaying, a Buffyverse podcast, has started their rewatch of Angel. They're doing it in consecutive, but they're doing it in order with how it was aired when it originally started, along with Buffy. And they're doing a great job. It's a lot of fun. I've never gone back and rewatched Angel, so it's fun to go back and look at it again. For my Marvel peeps, please check out Panels to Pixels coverage of the Marvel series What If. That's Steve and Mark. And also check out on Adrenaline Cinema, Billy and Mark just covered Demi Moore's, she won a Golden Globe for her performance in The Substance. It was really good. It was a very interesting take on beauty standards and today's society and whatnot, and it was a good listen. So we'd like to give a big thank you to Mark and Power Corp Entertainment for giving us this platform and everything you do to keep us going. Please visit the Power Corp website. It can be found on our Facebook page, and there you can find our podcast as well as other podcasts like the Slay Lounge podcast with Billy and Will. And you can also check out other projects that Mark is working on.
That wraps up our coverage of episode 1 of The Pit. We will be back to break down episode 2 titled 8 a.m.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. I'm Becky.
And I'm Mandy.
We'll catch you next week when we grab the remote and see what's going on with Mandy's cervix. Bye.